Got some old Losi Nitro stuff here. I'm not sure what the difference is between these two, other than the arms. I'm assuming that this is the Aftershock here, and these are LST. But yeah, I don't know. These are so much beefier, but the dimensions are the same. Anyways, I'm gonna build one truck out of this. This one has a bunch of missing parts. This is how I got it. It does have servos though. This one came with the engine pipe I already cleaned up, but it doesn't have servos and it has a cracked receiver box and just needs to be gone over, given some TLC. So I'm gonna go ahead and tear this one down, rebuild it with what I can, and then use what parts are needed from this, and go from there. So far, I found that the diff housing is cracked. One of the drive shafts is missing. And I didn't see these cracks on the tank before, so I need a new tank. And now that I'm looking at these other arms, I'm noticing that the drive shafts in here are just beefy. So I'll probably just switch these over to these arms. They're beefier in general. So, yeah. Well, here it is, broken down. I'm gonna need a new tank. I'm gonna need one new diff cover case. We'll see. When I break into these, maybe I'll need something else. I don't know. But here we go. I'm just gonna go ahead and clean these parts that I can reuse. And then we'll come back and break into the transmission. Gonna need some new spare gears and the differentials. We'll start putting this thing back together. And as we do so, we'll be borrowing parts from this one. I'm already gonna go ahead and take the arms and the drive shafts and the knuckles from that build, because these ones are a little older, weaker. The previous owner tightened one of the shock mount screws too tight. Whatever. We'll see what's going on. Okay, so broke into the transmission, and it looks really nice inside. All I have to do is clean things up, re-grease, reassemble, and it's ready to put in the chassis. So that's pretty encouraging. This differential right here was in the rear. It's in fair condition. I'm not worried about using that. But this one here, the teeth here are a little more worn. It's a little more shot. And the case is broken on the top half. So I'm gonna order a new case, a new ring and pinion. The internals, the planetary gears inside there feel fine. So we'll see when I open it up, but I'm also gonna need some new spare gears. These ones are just eaten up. Looks like the previous owner may have attempted to, excuse me, may have attempted to replace these, because this ring or snap ring isn't in it all the way, so not sure what happened there, but yeah, it looks like these are, you know, pretty new too. So anyways, replace those. And I actually changed my mind after disassembling this. I'm gonna keep all of the parts here the same, because I cleaned them. But after looking at it and taking the steering rack out, I realized that there's you can install another steering rack in the rear, make this thing four-wheel steer. So I think I'm just gonna do that. And the reason I was noticing that all of the arms and knuckles have the ability to steer, and where the rear ones were fixed was just on like the bottom of the bulkhead. So I think there's room to play for rear steer, and on the rear of this one, it's not rear steer. It's fixed. So I think I'm gonna end up having two trucks, just because I wanna do rear steer here and see what's up. But yeah, so that's looking good in there. Be reassembled. We'll get the transmission back onto this chassis, and I'll leave the front and rear open, because I like the way they built this, so that you can just take the face off of the chassis, the front and rear end of the chassis, and slide the diff out. So I'll just build up the chassis of this one and leave it open for when I get the parts that I need. So yeah, this will be interesting. I like seeing the evolution of, what the companies think to improve upon over time. Anywho. Got everything cleaned from this first LST, ready for reassembly. So For the parts I need, definitely, there's going to be one diff case, one diff ring and pinion, and each high and low speed spur gears. One of the things that I noticed in the difference between the LST and the XXL I have was the chassis rails have the ability to do rear steer. So I went ahead and borrowed the crankshaft from, the bell crank from this one, and I'm going to do rear steer. I'm also going to be taking the receiver box because it's in good condition. This one still works too, but it's cracked, and I'd rather just use a nice new one. And I'm going to use this cover instead as well, because this one doesn't have the cap and that only sticks by adhesive, so I'd rather have the one that bolts into the chassis. So that's where it's at now. Just about to reassemble the transmission. I'm just going to put some grease on those gears. I wanted to pull the case apart to really clean off the outside of it, get the extra grease out the inside, re-grease the gears. Everything in there is immaculate. After taking this transmission apart, I understand clearly why people desire this truck. It's a good truck. I just haven't gotten to one yet, so this has been sitting and sitting on a shelf. Finally wanted to wipe the dust off it and see what's going on inside and figure out what needed to be replaced and yada yada. So this is where we're at. I'm going to start rebuilding the chassis and then just putting the parts that I have in it, like one complete diff. I'll put that in the front, transmission, and just kind of get the bones put together so that way I can start working on the other stuff that I need to get for it. Anyways, I'm going to go ahead and finish the transmission, rebuild the diff, and then start putting the chassis together so that the front diff and the transmission link. And I'll probably just put the front end together first and go from there. That's how I see things going. I'm going to use this one for parts. As you can see, I've already sourced some from it. I'm going to take the drive shafts as well, because one of the shafts is missing. I mean, I could rebuild this, but I'm just going to use these ones here. I'm going to take the servos and the servo mounts, and yeah, so that's where this project stands. I do have another one coming, so I'll have two of these, one rear steer, one regular, and then a parts lot. So I'm going to finish what I have now, and then that'll be the end of this part of the series. And then when I get the other stuff, I'll come back and do a second video on it. Alright, so I've gotten things sorted for what I want to start building, and I'm going to put the transmission back together, put a little grease in it, build this chassis, and then take the bits off this that I'm looking for, like these chassis mount, servo mounts. These servo mounts and servos. And then, yeah. Just put a little bit of grease on there. So I just put a little dot of grease on anything I thought that moves. I'll even put some down here. So that's good. I'm gonna go ahead and start putting this stuff together. I'm just gonna put these cups on there. Alright, so I'm gonna get started on the chassis. Get the transmission in there. Maybe even get the front end on there. We'll see. Alright, so here's the chassis. I gotta finish doing the brake assembly and stuff for the transmission, so I'm just gonna, that'll be on the next part. Yeah, chassis is looking good. Got the rear steer set up. This probably isn't gonna work. Oh, that's what that is. It will work, it was just the screws in the way. So we'll see. But yeah, I just gotta get the rest of the transmission back together, and then this chassis will be complete. Then I'll work on the front end. from there. After all that good talk about swapping arms and doing the front end first, I ended up deciding to do the rear end first and not swapping arms. I can do rear steer here, so we'll give this a try. The engine's in here loosely just for mock-up reasons, but yeah, things come along quite well so far. It's almost together a little bit. So yeah, we'll see. I got another one of these on the way. It's got the steering servos and steering setup, and it's a not single speed, I meant to say. There's no reverse, it's forward only converted. So there's only one servo for throttle. So what I'll do is I'll take that throttle one and put it back here for rear steer. So yeah, we'll see. I'll get back to this once those parts come in. I ended up doing the rear also because the way that this front drive shaft lined up to the transmission was like barely inside the cup. I even feel a little uncomfortable with this fitment there. I wish I went in a little more, but that's good contact, so we'll do it. And this is the diff that came out of the rear. So this other drive shaft I'm sorry, when I had this drive shaft in the front, it didn't quite reach, and this one does seem a little bit longer, so we'll see. But yeah, so that's where things stand now. Once I get the other parts for this and can put the front end on, I'll finish the shocks. Went ahead and disassembled this stuff just so it's parts. I'm gonna keep this and I'm gonna plastic weld it. That's not too bad. And it's not like pushed in or anything, so I'm pretty certain I'll be able to plastic weld that. Keep this tank. But yeah, I've got other things I want to work on, so I'm gonna clean this up, make it easily accessible, and get working on some other things here. But yeah, thanks for checking it out. Stay tuned, there's more to come for this project. If you're into Losi LST Aftershock XXL, XXL2, X3L, whatever, check this video out and leave a comment below if you think there's something that I could have done differently or better. I'm always looking for constructive criticism, so appreciate that. But yeah, thanks for your interest in Nitro, and we'll see you soon with some more LST stuff.